Hello, my name is Andrew Mestdagh, and today I'm going to be educating you on state income tax requirements for non-resident athletes. More specifically, I will be responding to the following issue. To what extent and under what circumstances is a professional athlete responsible for paying income tax in the state jurisdictions where they played their visiting games? This presentation is going to be organized in the following way. First, I'll address the constitutionality of a state's ability to tax a non-resident athlete. Second, I will give a brief background of how the states have pursued taxing non-resident athletes in the past. And third, I will discuss the primary problems that non-resident athletes face under the current system. Through case law, the Supreme Court has developed a framework for determining the constitutionality of state tax measures under the Due Process Clause and the Commerce Clause. Due Process Clause. Section 1 of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibits states from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This is important to non-resident athletes because the Due Process Clause requires some definite link, some minimum connection between a state and the person, property, or transaction that it's seeking to tax. In Quill v. North Dakota, the court held that the minimum contact required is an economic presence within the state. A non-resident athlete who plays an away game in another state would satisfy the economic presence requirement under the Due Process Clause. On to the Commerce Clause. The purpose of this Commerce Clause is to prevent state regulation from impeding interstate commerce. We find guidance to this issue in the four-prong test provided in the historic Complete Auto Transit case that was heard by the Supreme Court. In that case, the Supreme Court held that a state tax must be applied to an activity with a substantial nexus with the taxing state. It must be fairly apportioned. It must not discriminate against interstate commerce. And must be fairly related to the services provided by the state. Now that you understand the constitutional basis, which gives the state the ability to levy an income tax on non-residents, I'll give you a brief background of how states have pursued non-resident athletes in the past. Prior to the 1980s, states generally limited their pursuit of non-resident taxpayers to highly paid and highly visible entertainers. These entertainers included like rock stars and other highly visible performers, but rarely included professional athletes. And for this reason, athletes historically filed returns in only two states: one in the state in which they permanently resided, and the other where they played their home games. This all changed in the 1980s with just the exponential growth in professional athlete salaries, cuts in federal funding, coupled with tougher economic times, really forced state treasury departments to look elsewhere for revenue sources. Now I'd like to highlight some of the primary problems with the existing non-resident athlete taxing procedures. States derive authority to tax the income of individuals under two different approaches, either the residence-based approach or the source-based approach. The details of the two approaches are not as important as the fact that multiple taxation often occurs when the two theories overlap. Some states have mitigated the burden of multiple taxation by granting residents a credit for income paid to other states. Still, professional athletes play in a large number of taxing jurisdictions, each one having a different and sometimes conflicting system for taxing income. The complexities increase the opportunities for double taxation of income, no doubt. Issues also arise when an athlete is assessed tax for prior years in a non-resident state. The athlete is then forced to amend the returns from the prior years in order to receive the tax credit from his home state. Further compounding the problem is the fact that oftentimes the statute of limitations in some states may only last 3 years, and in that case, there's going to be double taxation for the years where you're no longer allowed to amend your return. Just to wrap it up, in conclusion, the states have the ability to tax non-resident athletes based on the due process and commerce clauses found in the United States Constitution. The bottom line is that the system is so compliance heavy that it often becomes so burdensome on the athletes that the states really need to find a better, more uniform system for handling the taxation of non-resident athletes. Thank you.